Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, participants, and speakers on the panel today. Yesterday, we discussed how aware we are on this important issue of air pollution and its impacts. We realize the awareness levels are not yet there. We are still trying to make people more and more aware about this invisible demon. Now, here today, we have an interesting event on how to clean up the air in Indian cities. I'm just sharing some of my slides just to contextualize the whole issue before we go ahead with the session. Yesterday, we saw how 70 to 80% of Indian cities are violating the nationally prescribed standards of particulate matter. And we know how relaxed our nationally prescribed standards are in comparison to the WHO guidelines. Now, if you see this picture, this clearly tells you the whole Indo-Gangetic plain, the northern region of the country, is under the influence of very high pollution, be it summers or it becomes even worse in the case of winters. Now, there is, of course, a meteorological component involved in this, but there is no denial that there are plenty of sources which are contributing to the problem across the year. The situation improves somewhat in summers because of the meteorological higher ventilation coefficient, but the levels still remain much higher than the standards. Now, let's take an example of a city like Delhi, and there are so many cities which will show a similar kind of curve of pollution. You can see this is the chart of a whole year of three different years, 2018, 2019, 2020, for PM 2.5 concentrations, an average of about 30 stations in the city. Now, clearly, you can see the peaks in the post-monsoon season, which you can attribute it to the regional transport of pollution due to agricultural burning. But the whole winters is actually no less. This is almost reaching 200, 300 micrograms of PM 2.5 concentrations, which are extremely high and at least 4 or 5 times higher than the standard of 60 microgram, which is the daily standard for PM 2.5 concentration, and way above the WHO guidelines. This is a story of so many cities in India, and people are exposed to very high levels of pollution. Now, just to tell you that, this is not an insolvable problem. What we saw during the lockdowns, the pollution in a city like Delhi went down by almost 43% for PM 2.5 and almost 60% by NOx levels. Now, this clearly shows that if you cut down on emissions from certain sources which have higher contributions in the problem, you can actually get closer to the standards. And that's what is depicted in these charts for Delhi. If I move ahead, there is another story which comes out of the pollution during lockdowns. We monitored at 3 different locations. We found that the pollution was less if I compare 2020 when the lockdowns were there with 2019. But despite that, almost 30 to 60% of times, the levels were not meeting the standards. That means despite cutting down so many sources in the city of Delhi, there were so many regional forces, so many regional contributors like agricultural residue burning, like biomass burning happening in rural kitchens, and the industries outside the city, they were still contributing to both primary and secondary fractions of PM 2.5. Now, clearly highlighting these few messages which I can cull out from the overall assessment. The first thing is it is a solvable thing, and we have seen in different parts of the world which dealt with this problem, be it London, be it cities in US, Tokyo. All these cities have dealt with this problem, probably with higher level of pollution during those times. But now, if you see the levels of these pollutants, they have cut it down to almost very low levels. The second message which we have got is that it is not just a city-specific issue. It is a regional problem. And unless you take measures at a much wider region across the whole airshed of a city, you're not going to reach the standards which you are looking up to. third message is, of course, very, very clear that focusing just on one particular sector may not give you the desired results. You must know which are the sectors contributing to the problem, and here comes the role of science. Unless you scientifically know that this is the share of a particular sector, this is the share of a particular subsector, you will never be able to take pinpointed optimal decisions for control. And for that, you need capacities. There are, of course, research institutes like TERI, like IITs, who are there to help. But the real capacities need to be built within the pollution control boards, within the regulators, within the municipal corporations, who are the real, implementers of things at the city level. So this is a broad context. I must also tell you and thank Bloomberg Philanthropies for supporting TERI, for not just holding this event, but supporting a big program under the collaboration with the MOEFCC, where we are doing a number of things at the central and state levels. We are developing a national emission inventory for air pollutants. We are carrying out source apportionment studies at Surat and Patna. We are carrying out a very interesting study on assessing the cost benefit of different options for control of pollution in a city like Delhi. We have shown the results of our studies during the lockdowns, and we have a very a nice consortium of institutes who are working in different cities of the country. CSTEP, one of our partners, is doing a study in Patna, has done a study in Patna, and also doing a source apportionment study in a city of Bangalore. We are doing a number of capacity building and awareness generation programs. And finally, we have made contributions to a repository of information on air pollution. So this is just a broad background. What we are trying to achieve in this event is, two broad discussions. The first panel is going to focus on what can we learn from international experiences. It is, as I said, it is not the first time a country is trying to deal with air pollution. There are so many examples. And, we are fortunate to have international experts with us today who are going to share some very valuable experience which they have got in different parts of the world. And I'll not try to steal that show. I'll wait for them to speak on their own. But let me first of all invite Ms. Priya Shankar, who is, India Director, Climate and Environment Program, Bloomberg Philanthropies. She's co-leading the global air quality portfolio, which includes projects in India, Southeast Asia, and Europe. She works on the issues of energy transition, subnational climate action, and currently on a part-time secondment with COP26 Climate Champions team. There are so many things to her credit. I will not be able to speak all of these. Priya, all yours to set up the tone for this event and explain to us what we are doing in India. All yours.
Thank you so much, Sumit. And on behalf of Bloomberg Philanthropies, I would like to thank the Ministry of Environment, the Central Pollution Control Board, and the State Pollution Control Boards of Bihar, Karnataka, Gujarat, Delhi, and the cities of Surat, Bangalore, Patna, and Delhi for their partnership. Bloomberg Philanthropies supports work in more than 570 cities in 160 countries around the world. Here in India, we are delighted to be supporting a technical assistance initiative in support of the National Clean Air Programme in collaboration with a number of partners, including TERI, Shakti, CSTEP, WRI, IIT Kanpur, ADRI, Clean Air Asia, and others. Air pollution, as Sumit mentioned, is a major challenge, not just in India, but throughout the world. 90% of the world's population breathes air that is unhealthy, according to WHO standards. But it is not only an environmental and public health challenge, it is also an economic one that costs the global economy over US $5.7 trillion or 4.4% of GDP. We also know that many of the conditions exacerbated by air pollution can increase the risks presented by COVID-19. In light of the COVID pandemic, tackling air pollution has taken on an even greater urgency. At Bloomberg Philanthropies, as Sumit mentioned, we support work on air pollution in European cities, including London and Paris, as well as in Southeast Asia, including Jakarta. And we also support an international network of cities, C40, through which 35 cities have come together to commit to an air quality declaration. And we are delighted that 2 Indian cities, Delhi and Bangalore, are part of this declaration. As part of our collaboration on the National Clean Air Programme, we are supporting work at the national level and also in the cities of Delhi, Patna, Bangalore, and Surat. Our collaboration on NCAP is structured around 3 key pillars. The first is better evidence and data, including better understanding of sources at the national level and in cities. The second is policy engagement and advocacy, including on clean air action plans. And the third is capacity building through peer-to-peer learning, such as through the NCAP Knowledge Network. As we know, and as Sumit mentioned, air pollution, especially in India and other developing countries, is a really complex problem with many different causes and sources contributing, including cooking with biomass or wood in households, industry, transport, power, waste burning, and construction. Because it is so complex, it can often seem intractable and unsolvable. And as Sumit mentioned again, we have to remember that it is solvable, and there have been examples of improvements both in India and in many different parts of the world. I'd like to share one such example today. When Mike Bloomberg was mayor of New York City, improving air quality in the city was a key goal. With increased monitoring and data analysis, it was found that just 1% of the city's buildings were causing as much pollution as all of the city's cars and trucks put together. As a result, the city banned the dirtiest burning heating fuels and started the Clean Heat Initiative to help building owners make the switch to cleaner fuels. In 5 years, the amount of particulate pollution fell by 23%, and the amount of sulfur dioxide in the air fell by 69%, leading New York City to have its cleanest air in 50 years. As we discuss today how to accelerate and sustain air quality improvements in the context of NCAP, it will be helpful to consider and think about how we can prioritize actions and identify some low-hanging fruit and quick win initiatives, develop an effective tracking process to be able to demonstrate impacts, ensure that key stakeholders have been engaged early on in the process of implementation, develop public support for bold measures through increased public awareness, and finally, think of improvements in air quality and the implementation of NCAP, not just in isolation, but as a key and integral part of broader sustainable development and green recovery strategies. Thank you for joining us here today, for your partnership, and for your efforts in addressing this critical challenge. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Priya. And you could cover the length and width of the work we are doing with you and along with other consortium partners in India. Thank you so much for your support, and we look forward to continued collaboration with you. Let's start our first panel, and we have 3 very eminent speakers. Let me first introduce Ms. Frances Beinecke, who has served as president between 2006 to 2015 and is currently President Emerita of the Natural Resource Defense Council, which is a leading non-profit environmental organization. She has played an instrumental role in developing NRDC's India program, which focuses on climate, clean air, and clean energy. She was appointed by the President Obama to the National Commission on the BP Deepwater Horizon oil spill and offshore drilling. She has been a member of Secretaries of Energy's Advisory Board under Secretary Chu and Moniz, the Advisory Board of the MIT Energy Initiatives, with the boards of World Research Institutes and NRDC's Action Fund. So many things to your credit, Ms. Beinecke. You have been a regular speaker. Thanks to you to coming to WSDS so regularly. It has always been a pleasure to listen to you. Here, we are going to talk about, pollution. And we know how California had its journey to reduce air pollution. I have worked with University of California in San Diego, Professor Ramanathan, and I remember that famous chart which tells us that everything increased, the number of cars, the overall oil consumption, and you cut down the black carbon level. You cut down the pollution levels by almost 80% in last 3 decades. How did that happen? Can we have some customization for Indian cities and have some lessons learned out of this story? All yours, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Sharma. Thank you for inviting me again to the WSDS. I've been engaged in many different sessions over the years, and it's a pleasure to be able to join you today, even though remotely. Hopefully, we'll be in person in the future. Today's topic, the future of air progress and constraints, is an incredibly timely one. Air pollution continues to be one of the most pressing public health issues in the world, particularly in Asia. Just this week, a new study which came out, published in Environmental Research Journal, actually doubled the mortality rate coming from air pollution worldwide, jumping from last year's figure of 4 million deaths worldwide to over 8 million projected, the majority of which are in Asia. So the imperative of addressing this issue, I think, has never been greater as the science and data becomes clearer on it. It's becoming increasingly clear in India as elsewhere in the world that air pollution and the health impacts are closely intertwined with social and economic impacts as well as contributing to climate change. So addressing air pollution has major societal benefits across the board, not only health benefits, but those are critical ones too. Dr. Sharma showed in his slides how pervasive air pollution is in India and how critical it is to address that. And so today what I want to do is talk just briefly about some of the experience that NRDC has had in the United States, but also elsewhere, particularly in China. We're now 50 years old, and we have actually worked on addressing air pollution for each of those 50 years. And what underpins our work is 4 basic premises. First of all, it's critical to set health-based standards that are based on the most current health data. Also, setting performance standards for constant improvement in cleaning up the air and focusing on timetables for implementation. I know that's an issue in India, setting the dates for when various standards should be met. It's critical to stick with those dates and also then to focus on compliance and enforcement. It's not enough to set the standards. You have to meet the standards and hold governments accountable to meet them. In the United States, we do have a strong track record of cleaning up the air, as the 2 speakers both referred to, and California does provide a very strong example of that. Filthy smog covered the state of California in the early 70s, and that has increasingly improved over time, but it's improved with tremendous diligence and attention and participation across all parts of government, at the city and the regional level, and of course, at the state agency, the California Air Resources Board, which has been absolutely central to ensuring that each element of the state's plans got implemented. And as a result, they've been able to decrease levels of pollution significantly, slashing levels of carbon monoxide, nitrogen dioxide, and sulfur dioxide as much as 80 to 90%. So yes, this can be done and have specific economic benefits as well. Just to use a specific example, NRDC has worked over 20 years to clean up the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach. And this is important. They're one of the largest ports in the United States, and the impact of that pollution was very, very focused, as it often is, on a very poor and underserved community. And in working in partnership with that community, using litigation and advocacy, we were able to clean up that port dramatically by setting standards for making the port electrify, having the ships connect to the electrification system when they came into port, and continuing an air quality monitoring system, as well as innovative strategies for enforcement and compliance. The work in California has shown that incentives and mandates and a phased approach towards reductions of emissions at their source does work, but it takes time. You have to invest in air quality, literally, as we have seen, over many decades. But the rewards are evident in the improved health costs, reduced health costs, and increased economic productivity. Incentives to promote the rapid adoption of cleaner technologies, such as the Clean Vehicle Rebate Program and the Community Air Protection Incentives Program, have helped to reduce emissions, specifically by targeting hotspots, which I think from our experience, has been very, very important. And of course, as you've said, while the air got cleaner, California's population doubled, its vehicle miles traveled tripled, and it became the 6th largest economy in the world. So the investment really, I would say, both improved the health of the citizens of California, but it also contributed to a very robust economy. California's environmental policies can serve as models for other cities, both around the country and around the world. And one thing I wanted to do is just use that ports example for a moment, because our experience in the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach, we actually took to our program team working in China. And China has begun a very dramatic program to clean up its ports, very much modeled on that. I took a trip to Shenzhen years ago, and they had started to electrify because it was being done in Long Beach, and it had very significant results. So in a mere 4 years, in 3 specific ports in China, they've reduced their SO2 by 1/3 to 1/2 and reduced their particulates by 25% as a result of the standards that they put in place, and using innovative systems of monitoring and compliance, including drones and remote systems, as well as training workers to be able to identify where the pollution sources were. So NRDC has been working also in India with our partners in Gujarat and Ahmedabad, and we are coming out with a study called, I'm going to hold it up here, Clearing the Air, Highlights of City Actions to Reduce Air Pollution. And I think I hope you will all get it and take a look at it, because one of the key elements, I think, of being successful is to keep track of what is happening, and from a civil society standpoint, keep up the advocacy to ensure that the timetables are met and that compliance does occur. So for an organization like NRDC, keeping track and publicizing to the general public what the status of improvement and compliance is very important. Cities must develop their own capacity to manage and monitor their air pollution, and have the capacity within the city, the technical capacity to do that. And I think Priya, in her description of what Mayor Bloomberg was able to do in New York, is a very good example of that. Not only do you have to have national standards, but the cities have to take responsibility and have the expertise and have the resources to invest in making the commitments to clean up the air that are required. So it's essential that the institutions are developed. I know that India is currently doing that. I think the California Air Resources Board provides a good example of that. You need regular audits, technology development, as well as mandatory reporting and transparency to ensure compliance. In addition, you have to have agreements between the national and the cities, and these are things that India is now developing. We have been working for the last several years for the cities of Ahmedabad and Pune on their air pollution plans. We created an air reporting and response plan in Ahmedabad, which I think is a very important first step on education that unfortunately has been slowed down a little bit this year due to COVID, as many things have, but I think it does show the direction that we need to go in. NRDC and partners are working with city and regional officials on air pollution mitigation measures, including prioritizing interventions within the city plans under the National Clean Air Program. And our experience in the US and in China, and as well currently in India, is that regulatory reform, compliance, and enforcement are absolutely critical elements. And we look forward to continuing our work with parties in key cities, promoting these different elements as India wrestles with the air pollution problem that is so important to address right now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Beinecke. I think a few of the things which I can recall from what all you have said, health standards need to be based on actual health studies, right? There has to be some mechanism of putting some dates to the implementation plans. You just cannot leave them as wish lists with no time restrictions. The compliance and enforcement is a must, right? We can have plans unless you enforce the things on ground and comply to the prescribed standards, they are just on the papers. And of course, the classic Californian example is going to remain in my mind forever. So thank you so much for your intervention. Let me just move on to our next speaker, Ms. Glenda Batten. She's the Deputy Executive Director of Clean Air Asia. She's a lawyer with 20 years of experience in policy and program development for clean air, sustainable transport, industrial emission control, and climate change mitigation. She was among the lawyers who helped draft the 1999 Philippine Clean Air Act, implementing rules and regulations. Glenda, we have heard Ms. Beinecke. She spoke about how it changed in US. Let me tell you one thing. I mean, I fully agree to what she said. But there are so many people who will say that US is a developed country, right? They can do that. They have money to invest. Let's hear out from you what is happening in the Asian cities who are there at par on the economic terms with the population growth, with so many other constraints which we all face in the developing countries. You're working in so many air quality, so many Asian cities related to air quality. Let's hear out from you. What are your experiences? Are there any wins? Are there any losses? What is happening in Asia? Over to you, Glenda.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sharma. And I have a few slides which I'd like to share with you. And it is a pleasure to be able to engage with our Indian colleagues and leaders in the state pollution control boards on inspiring city actions for clean air. And for those of you who are not familiar with Clean Air Asia, we have been working towards Asia without air pollution for 20 years now. And we have assisted city and national governments by providing policy guidance, building their capacity, and informing for action. And this is just some of the work that we have done with cities. Our approach is very science-based, multi-sectoral, and multi-stakeholder. And I highlight here some of the work that our India office is doing, which is capacity assessment in 30 cities, building the capacity for clean air action plan development, and currently a hotspots assessment in Delhi, and recently mainstreaming air quality indicators in the climate smart cities framework and developing training modules for cities. And as we know, there are more and more cities with very large populations in Asia. And this urbanization is just going to increase more and more up to 2050, 60% urbanization in this region. However, the challenge is that 98% of surveyed 419 Asian cities as of 2018 have been living under conditions where they're at risk from the health impacts of PM 2.5 exposure, which are above the WHO guideline values. And as we have heard, air pollution now is the fourth leading global risk factor for death in 2019, with millions of deaths associated or caused by air pollution globally. And from studies that have been done in Asia, the main sources of pollution are transportation, but in addition to transport emissions, we also have indoor air pollution from household fuel burning, and also from industries and sources outside of the city and state boundaries. So Clean Air Asia has really promoted data-driven solutions for clean air. And this is based on many years of developing this guidance framework for better air quality in Asian cities, which has been endorsed by ministries of environment across Asia. We emphasize the need for evidence, finding out the sources of air pollution, monitoring the existing air quality levels, and based on the science, developing a clean air action plan with concrete mitigation actions and with the timelines which Frances, our previous speaker, said need to really be met. So an example of this science-based approach is one we're doing together with the City of Manila and 3M. And this program also includes learning together with Delhi. So what we have done there is we are gathering the evidence by installing micro air sensors, and we have conducted visioning workshops with the city so they can set their air quality objectives. And we have done training on science-based evidence gathering, such as emissions inventories, data mapping of pollution-related health cases, and communicating air quality. So during the early part of the pandemic, the air quality monitoring equipment registered a significant reduction in PM2.5 levels, 54% in the roadside area. And these are the results. And because we're working with non-reference instruments, the micro air sensors are cheaper. We have to ensure that they are providing good reference. We have co-located these instruments with a reference monitor, and it has shown very good correlation in terms of performance. Just showing how data can be put in a format that is easily understandable to the population and to decision makers. This is also a way of presenting PM 2.5 levels. And more importantly, mapping the different sources, so point sources, area sources, or motor vehicle sources, and knowing what the meteorological conditions are in the city are important. And so these are preliminary results of the mobile source emissions inventory, showing where the different pollutants, what are the sources, what are the different types of vehicles that produce the different pollutants in the city. And it is also important to really look at the health impacts that are being, what are the leading causes of mortality and morbidity in the city, and correlating it or indicating which ones may be caused by air pollution. We did this by using PhilHealth data, which is the national health insurance data, and finding the location of where the health claims are. And we have found very interesting data here that majority of the claims were respiratory, and so therefore there's a need to really act on air pollution to reduce the health impacts. Part of the work is also to build capacity. So this was one that which we did during the International Clean Air Day. And building partnerships. We know that states and cities may not have the capacity in-house to develop all of the scientific approaches, but working with universities would really be helpful. Now, I want to focus on one example of an inspiring city, which hopefully we can get a lot of lessons from, and this is Bangkok. So Bangkok experiences blue skies from March to November every year. And as you can see, I think this is maybe similar to the iconic slides that you, Dr. Sharma, mentioned about California. So the graphs that are going up are actually the numbers, the growing numbers of motor vehicles in Bangkok. And yet, if you look at the ambient air pollution levels, they're all going down. So these are the lines that are, the blue line that you see where the trends are all going down for PM10 and for PM2.5 and for CO. And as you can see here, the annual average for PM2.5 concentrations in Bangkok up to 2020 have really been decreasing, almost meeting their standard, and similar to the other pollutants as well. And the reason for this is because they have really cleaned up the fuels and ensured that their vehicles meet the Euro 4 standards. And there is a way for as a resident to know what is the air pollution level in your area, and this is through the Air for Thai app. And here is a smiling face. They have the ability to forecast air pollution several days ahead. And however, not all is good and well in Bangkok because there are still seasonal short-term air pollution problems every winter because of meteorological conditions. And you can see here the air pollution here in this photo. It's almost being trapped close to the ground because of inversion. And the source contribution of PM 2.5 in Bangkok is from diesel vehicles. Biomass burning is also quite a big source of pollution. And this is the risk map of where biomass burning is occurring, mostly in the northern part of Bangkok. And as you can see, this is almost a day-to-day situation of how on September 24, you have all the monitoring stations registering blue, very good clean air. And then a few days later, it becomes yellow and becomes red. So seeing how complex and how things can change from day to day. And so in September of 2019, there was no smiley face there in the Air for Thai app because it was registering very high levels of pollution. And some of the problems identified were that there are still very polluting, smoke belching, old diesel trucks that are running on roads. And the current law says they can be fined, but they're actually not prohibited from getting off the roads. And so this needs to be addressed. And the solutions that have been determined to work is to increase public transportation within the city so that there will be lesser use of private vehicles. And this is the famous MRT map of Bangkok. Other proposed responses include reducing the importation or prohibiting importation of secondhand vehicles, which are usually old and polluting, improving their vehicle inspection and maintenance program, encouraging work from home to reduce vehicles coming into the city, improving biomass residue management to reduce open burning, and effectively implementing this multi-country ASEAN agreement on transboundary haze. And in 2019, if you remember, this was the period when Bangkok was all in the newspapers, even in the international papers, because of the incidents of air pollution there. So the cabinet came up with a resolution with three main measures, and this first measure is they came up with an emergency response plan. Depending on the level of pollution, what would be the response of different agencies? So this is an example of a snapshot of that. And the second measure is really controlling and minimizing, just two more, controlling and minimizing air pollutant emissions at source. And so these are addressing transport, open burning, industry, and the different sources. And lastly is improving the management. So extending air quality monitoring, strengthening their capacity. And so many, many more examples are available on this website of Clean Air Asia. And just some concluding thoughts that after the pandemic, climate change and air pollution are really the next curves we need to flatten with the same urgency as we are trying to flatten the pandemic, the COVID-19 curve. And stronger policies and greater political will are needed. And these are some of the key factors we have seen, that there has to be national standards, frameworks, and roadmaps matched with local clean air action plans, multi-stakeholder collaboration, capacity building for air quality management, and demonstrating impact of our efforts. Thank you very much for this chance to meet. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Glenda. This was very informative. You touched upon so many things, the use of the increasing use of low-cost sensors, the how to convert scientific information into something like an AQI, which is more understandable for people. The case study of Bangkok, I was really impressed to see how Bangkok is following the footsteps of California and probably becoming the California of the East. So that's all heartening to see, and I'm sure someday all our cities in Asia are pollution free. Thank you so much. Let me move on to our next speaker, Mr. Eyad Kerbek. He's the director of the Air Quality Program at C40 Cities, leading C40's global air quality work. Interestingly, prior to joining to C40, Eyad has worked on air quality, climate, and public health issues with the city of New York, most recently serving as the executive director of the Air Quality Program at the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. In that role, Eyad was responsible for leading air quality monitoring, modeling research, and policy analysis activity to support implementation of cities' air quality and climate agendas. Very interesting, yeah. And because your CV says about both the things, air quality and climate, I am posing you a question along with your own presentation. If you can answer, how cities can synergize actions on air quality and climate fronts, right? On one side, there's a lot of fuel consumption happening, leading to GHG emissions. And on the other side of the coin, there's a lot of air pollution happening. The emissions of air pollutants are impacting human health, and when they move forward, they also form secondary pollutants like ozone and impact agriculture and probably the regional scale climate. So, what are your thoughts on synergizing actions on the two fronts in the cities? Over to you, Eyad.
Great, thank you very much, Dr. Sharma. Thank you very much to Terry and Bloomberg Philanthropies for having me today. I'm going to share a few slides today to share some of this. One moment. Great. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about some examples from C40 cities on urban air quality management successes. And I'd like to draw on a few themes across some cities, and I'll be mentioning a few cities that we've heard a little bit from today, and describe what are some of the components that we see as successful air quality management in some of the cities that we work with. So just as some context on who we are, C40 Cities is a network of the world's mega cities working together to tackle climate change and create healthier cities. Our network accounts for 97 cities around the world and 700 million people, accounting for 25% of global GDP. And our chair is the mayor of Los Angeles, Mayor Eric Garcetti, who has really made it a priority for our organization to look at these issues of air quality, public health, and climate, and the intersection across these issues. We know that a lot of the mayors within our organization are very focused on improving air quality as a means to meeting climate targets and vice versa. And so we look very closely at what is the intersection between these two issues, which I'll talk a little bit more later. So when we think about the components of successful urban air quality management, and this list certainly isn't comprehensive, but I want to touch on some of these themes that we see are quite common across cities that have been successful in addressing their air pollution. It includes cooperation among agencies across multiple levels of government and jurisdictions, including across regions. Cities can't act alone in addressing their air pollution problems and have to be working within a regional context to address sources outside of the city, secondary sources, and sources outside of their control. Effectively using data on exposures, sources, and health impacts, so the common tools like monitoring, inventories, modeling, and research, to design and implement local policies that address the most important sources and to ensure that resources are used effectively to prioritize those sources that matter. Investing in comprehensive programs and agencies for long-term planning, policy development, implementation, and enforcement. And lastly, empowering elected officials with evidence and solutions and informing the public so they can advocate for action. And this theme is quite important across all cities that have really improved air quality. It's really an engaged elected officials and engaged decision makers who are willing to make difficult decisions. And so I'm going to talk about 3 cities or 4 cities today that exemplify some of these themes. And some of them you've already heard a little bit about from some of the other panelists, particularly Los Angeles and New York City. But I'll give a little more detail on what we see as valuable in these locations. So in Los Angeles, on the cooperation theme, Los Angeles has been very successful through a collaborative air quality management approach. So in Los Angeles, air quality is managed by many different agencies, including at the national level, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency sets the national ambient air quality standards, while at the state level, the California Air Resources Board sets mobile source regulations and develops a state implementation plan to show how the state is going to meet the national ambient air quality standards. And then in the southern region of California, the South Coast Air Quality Management District regulates stationary sources and manages the reference monitoring network to demonstrate whether the region is in attainment with the national ambient air quality standards. And then moving further down into the city level, the LA County Health Department is overseeing public health programs, while the city of Los Angeles oversees policies within city agencies such as transport, sanitation, and the port. And we heard Frances speak earlier about all the great work that's happened at the Port of LA to address air pollution. And a key part of this is strong partnerships between these agencies ensure coordination on key rulemaking development, enforcement, and funding on air quality and climate programs. And this cooperation has existed for a long period of time. And so you can see the steady declines in air pollution levels in Los Angeles that we've heard about as GDP and population have grown. And we heard Priya speak earlier about the New York City example. And this is an example that I use to exemplify the theme of effectively using data to reduce emissions from individual sources. So in around 2008, 2009, the city began an air quality monitoring and source analysis program using new technologies, lower cost technologies, to understand how air pollution varied throughout the city. And they identified buildings and heating oil as an important predictor of local air pollution. The city did extensive public health analysis using air quality and public health modeling to look at the health and economic benefits of controlling this source. And at the time with Mayor Bloomberg, there was significant political will to address air pollution, and that spurred local policymaking and incentives to address this source. So there were city and state requirements to fully eliminate high sulfur heating oils, as well as a program called Retrofit Accelerator that provided technical and financial resources to building owners to switch. And this resulted in a very short amount of time, in about 10 years, 95% reduction in SO2 levels and 32% reduction in PM 2.5 levels. And I want to highlight the process from moving from the monitoring to the policy really only took about 5 years. So it was a very quick process when all the pieces were in place. When we look at the theme of investing in comprehensive programs, I want to highlight Mexico City's ProAir program. So the city government in Mexico City, working with the Metropolitan Environment Commission, has now implemented 4 consecutive programs since the first ProAir launched in 1990. And they've set clear goals to improve air quality, reduce health risks, and reduce GHG emissions within the city of within Mexico City. And they apply a very comprehensive air quality management process that's well supported throughout city government, which includes multi-stakeholder technical advisory group. They conduct health impact analysis and economic analysis of policies. And then they implement the common tools of air quality management, such as robust air quality monitoring, developing emissions inventories for criteria pollutants, air toxics, and greenhouse gases, and conducting air quality modeling to look at different scenarios and understand which scenarios should be prioritized for local air quality control. They collaborate closely with research institutions, as well as working with organizations like our own to understand best practices and what other cities are doing and what they can learn from some of the global cities. And in Mexico City has been a real success case on air quality, where we've seen air pollution level decline steadily over the past 20 to 30 years. And that's resulting in cleaner air in the city and improved public health outcomes. And finally, I want to mention the London example. And we heard a little bit about London earlier today, but exemplifying the theme of empowered elected officials and their efforts to improve air quality in London through traffic mitigation. The mayor has set some very ambitious air quality targets for the city, including meeting the WHO guidelines for air pollution by 2030, reaching the best air quality of any major world city by 2050, and achieving zero emissions in London by 2050 for GHGs and air pollutants. And the city has used various different types of tools, including new technologies, such as this study, the Breathe London study, which conducts hyperlocal air quality monitoring, innovative new technologies to understand the spatial and temporal patterns of air pollution, and use that data to engage the public and let the public know what the air pollution is in their neighborhood, and use it to evaluate the benefits of policy. The Mayor Khan, has made air quality a political priority, and that's been supported by the air quality and health evidence, which has provided the mayor the space and the room to implement a set of ambitious air quality policies. And one of the cornerstones of that effort is the ultra low emission zone, where in 2019, the city launched a program to start charging the most polluting vehicles from entering central London. And this will be expanded further in 2021. And that's already demonstrating significant local benefits to NO2 levels. So just finally, in summary, regional and multi-agency collaboration is key, including identifying sources of poor air quality, their location, and implementation of necessary policies and programs by responsible agencies and authorities. Actionable data is important, but there's many new innovations today that can be applied to quickly and more efficiently identify sources and implement new strategies. Implementing comprehensive air quality management tools can ensure that the right policies are put in place and effectively prioritize interventions. And finally, cities are important settings for public engagement that increase public participation and awareness and generate support for action. And because Dr. Sharma asked earlier, just to give a couple thoughts on alignment with climate action, I just want to mention a few things. The way that we look at alignment of air pollution and climate, as you so well described, is that the sources are often the same of air pollutants and greenhouse gases. That many air pollutants like black carbon are also climate forcers. And we know that a change in climate is going to worsen air quality levels through worsening wildfires and other means. And so we've been working a lot with cities to understand, how do you effectively plan and design policies that look at both air pollution and climate? So looking at how GHG inventories can be better aligned with air pollution inventories, how choices on climate action can improve air quality, and how you can maximize win-wins across greenhouse gas mitigation and air pollution improvement, and how you can demonstrate through modeling, health analysis, how action to reduce greenhouse gases creates healthier societies, and use that information to motivate the public and to motivate elected officials to take action on climate. So I can talk more about that in the panel and any questions, but thank you very much for taking the time, and feel free to reach out with any thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kerbeck. I think I could note down probably three more important points which you have made. First is about the collaboration which is required to solve this problem. I mean, no one can solve this problem in isolation. No city can itself control its air pollution problem just by taking measures within its own administrative area units. You need more regional approach. The one thing which stood out of your New York example is the role of science. I mean, you see so many vehicles traveling on the roads, you tend to believe they are the only ones which are contributing to my problems. And in the case of New York, it is so surprising to see that it was the emissions from heating in the buildings which came out to be the major contributor of this. Well, this situation could be dramatically different in a different city where vehicles may turn out to be the major contributors. That's why the role of source apportionment studies, the role of science becomes very, very important before you start dealing with the problem and start investing into the solution. Thank you so much, Mr. Kerbeck. Very, very important points. There are few questions. One for Ms. Beinecke. I'll just read the question for you. You told us about how California's environmental policy can serve as a model for other cities. If we keep this model in mind for a city like Delhi, apart from scientific measures for which many organizations are already working, how do we aware people and make sure they feel that air pollution is an invisible pandemic and they start voicing it out? Any record of how this was done in California, which will be helpful for cities in India?
Well, I think this is a good question, which shows how important the role of civil society is in bringing these issues to the public. I think the success that we had both in New York and Los Angeles, targeting a hotspot in Los Angeles, the Port of LA, where the particulate levels were so high in that immediate vicinity, and both designing what the performance standards and implementation measures were, but also having a public campaign on how serious it was. In New York, we had a similar campaign around diesel buses. It started with a simple ad actually on the back of a bus, which said, it's more dangerous to stand behind the bus than in front of it, which it was only a simple ad. We had very little money, but it got a lot of attention because the MTA did not want to run that ad on their bus, but they had to. And that actually started a whole program of highlighting how diesel bus pollution was a very serious problem in New York, particularly around bus depots, again, where people, people at the lower income level, more socially disadvantaged lived. And I think that it's one thing, and I think this is true in climate change too, that the data that's presented on a large scale, it has to be individualized and personalized to the location. And you can give the particular levels across the city, but I thought, as Glinda showed in Manila, if you actually look at what neighborhoods and what's happening in that neighborhood and what the source is in that neighborhood, suddenly it becomes a very real personal issue, and you can develop a strong public advocacy to get governments to deal with it. I think in all of the issues around the environment, the more we can personalize it and show how it affects someone's in their own lives, the more successful we are going to be in getting action to address it.
Thank you. It's another interesting question. Maybe Glinda or Iyad, if you would like to take it up. Adaptation or mitigation against air pollution? Which one is the need of the hour? Any one of you?
Maybe I can start. Definitely, people shouldn't use their lungs to clean the air. Basically, that is if we say we adapt to air pollution, we are basically saying we will use our people's lungs as a way of cleaning the air. So definitely no, definitely yes to mitigating the sources of pollution.
Here. Definitely mitigation.
Yeah, do you want to add anything to it?
Yeah, fully agree with Glinda. It is far more efficient to address the sources of pollution than to attempt to adapt to it.
And another point there is we know actually how to clean up air pollution. It's not, a scientifically not understood phenomenon. We actually know what the technology is. We know how to create the performance standards. We're currently in a transportation revolution to zero emission vehicles. So, we know where we need to get to. The thing is to create the standards and make the investment. I mean, this takes a long time and it takes money. I think the benefits, both financial, economic, and social benefits at the other end of the process greatly outnumber the costs, but you still have to make the investment.
Right. Absolutely. I fully agree to all three of you. So thank you so much. It was such a stimulating discussion, and we could see the examples of the West of European cities, Asian cities, and Bangkok was such a heartening thing to see that it has started to happen in Asia also. And our next session is about India. What is happening in Indian cities, and I must say Indian cities are not so far behind. In last 3-4 years, we have started to see actions happening in Indian cities. India launched its ambitious National Clean Air Program. The finances have started to flow now. The Finance Commission had allocated a significant, substantial amount to start action in Indian cities. There are a number of national scale measures which have been rolled down. The city level action plans at least have now been formulated. Of course, there is a need to strengthen them, but the work has initiated, and that's a well made start, I must say, in Indian context. So that's all about the second session we have. I thank all the three speakers for their contributions to this event, and will request them to stay on to listen to our session on Indian cities. Thank you so much. I just hand it over to Dr. Prashant Gargav, Member Secretary, Central Pollution Control Board. I don't think he needs any introduction. He is the man leading the efforts in India, right? I mean, I know him for last almost 15, 20 years, and I can see the flag of air quality in his hands, and he's leading, marching the forces forward, not just at the national scale, but also helping the state level bodies to, start actions, to implement actions on ground. Dr. Gargav, you have 4 eminent speakers with you from different states of India: Karnataka, Gujarat, Bihar, and Delhi. So all different types of states. I am looking forward to a very interesting discussion. All yours, sir, to moderate.
Thank you very much, Sumit. Good morning and good evening to all the distinguished participants. I joined a bit late, but I could listen to excellent presentation. Two, in fact, last presentation, one by good morning, Linda. Hope you're doing well, and then our last one by Mr. Yad. So it was very heartening to see India. I must say that in the last 4 or 5 years, before that also there were actions to improve air quality, but much focused attention or priority being given to air quality by all stakeholders, not just political will. In fact, all the stakeholders, be it public, who started demanding good air quality, the agencies which are responsible to mitigate, whether it is municipal bodies or transport departments, all other stakeholders, finances, as Sumit was saying, have started flowing in specifically for, for first time you had, budget mentioning air pollution. So it has got due attention, priorities from the highest authority in the political, in the government setup, and then of course from all the other stakeholders, even research institutes. So I see in last 3-4 years, there has been excellent collaborative efforts between administrators, policymakers, non-government organizations, many international agencies who are coming up, with their experiences to fast track our actions, scientific community to provide in-depth analysis in terms of sources that are of priority across different cities and towns and regions. In addition to city-specific actions, I mean, we all understand it's a regional problem. There are a lot of policy initiatives at national level, be it BS6 or moving towards stricter norms for power plants, or creating infrastructure for managing the waste. So national level actions, policy initiatives. There are different line ministries who are working with different programs, and all these efforts will eventually help us in improving air quality. Now, before I invite the analyst, there are a couple of points which I think air quality in Indo-Gangetic plain is a problem, particularly during winter. But when we analyze the data, look at the data all across, we find that in the southern part or in the central part and the coastal towns, of course, it's not that bad. I just spoke to my colleague from the air quality monitoring division, and he tells me that more than 60 or 65% of the towns where we have PM 2.5 monitoring stations are actually complying with the national norms. And majority of monitoring cities are not complying with PM10. So one sense that, one gets a sense that probably it is more of the coarse particles, the dust in the Indo-Gangetic plain, the meteorological conditions in that area probably is something that we need to worry more about. And with industrial emissions being made more strict with BS6, in the years to come, the PM 2.5 we should be able to handle much more effective than the coarser fraction of PM10. And that gives us all sense of satisfaction that PM 2.5, which is more problematic from health point of view, we should be in a much better position to deal with. With NCAP in place, with city-specific action plans, now all the cities, they are working on source apportionment, they are working on micro-level plans to mitigate. In fact, I think 70 cities out of 122 non-attainment cities that we have are already in the in the advanced stage of conducting source apportionment. I think we'll have more and more scientific. The municipal bodies are on board. There are finances available in addition to sector-specific grants which come for various schemes. My own understanding is that with this collaborative efforts, everyone giving priority to the cause, everyone working together, there is a clear direction coming from scientific community. There is clear directive coming from policy to achieve put the entire efforts on much faster track. So I think with this opening, let me invite the first speaker, Dr. Ashutosh Ghosh. He is chairman of Bihar State Pollution Control Board. Now, his state falls within Indo-Gangetic plain. That means he has to deal, much higher, much bigger problem. There are a lot of rural emissions as well. But despite that, I think he has been, there for quite a few years, pushing for expanding monitoring network. And I remember when we started making city-specific plans, we had detailed deliberations with all the stakeholders at the regional level, and Patna was among the first ones who prepared the city-specific plans, and was sort of considered one of the model plans because it captured all the sources, it captured all the short and long-term mitigation measures. So it was one of the good plans that we had at city level. I think one or two cities, probably Gaya is showing decreasing trend also there. So with this, I think I'll request Dr. Ghosh to share his experiences, Patna or other non-attainment cities that specifically he's working on, or the state level if there are any policy initiatives that he thinks will be able to add to our efforts. So over to you, Dr. Ghosh.
Thank you, Dr. Gargava. Good evening and good morning to everybody. As Dr. Gargava said, we are having 3 non-attainment cities in Bihar, and that is Patna, Gaya, and Muzaffarpur. And fortunately or unfortunately, the cities are located in the Indo-Gangetic plain. That is very prone to the dust formation. Soil is alluvial, and the entire soil is so soft that we are prone to the formation of the PM 2.5 and 10. Even if you don't do anything, if you don't have any anthropogenic activity, even then there will be the problem of PM 2.5 due to alluvial soil throughout the Gangetic plain. Despite that, we are trying our best to control the things. And actually, I joined Pollution Control Board 3 years back. And when I joined, I came to know that in Bihar, only 3 stations are there, 3 air quality monitoring stations. So that was a big gap because based on 3 monitoring stations, we were monitoring the whole state of Bihar. So the first thing that we started as Pollution Control Board to increase the number. So we added 8 more, it became 11, and now 24 more is going to be added within 15 days. So we'll have now 35 monitoring stations. And that will give me a better idea as far as the state of pollution, air pollution is concerned in the state of Bihar. We have taken many initiatives, and besides the PM 2.5 emitting from the road or from the open field, one big thing was the brick kilns in Bihar. Bihar has about 6,000 brick kilns in number. We started as policy level to convert the old technology brick kilns to the new technologies like zigzag technology. We did a lots of work and workshops and training. We published books. And as of now, I'm proud to inform you, that out of 6,000 brick kilns, 5,000 brick kilns have been converted to zigzag technology. And the level of emission from brick kilns has decreased a lot as compared to 2018. We have compared the emission from brick kilns through source apportionment study, and the decline of about 25% from brick kilns through this change in technology. And 3 days back, we have signed an MOU with Undp. The purpose of that signing of MOU is to study the brick kilns of Bihar through satellite imagery and also artificial intelligence. We will be working together, and we will be observing all the brick kilns who have converted and who have not converted, and we will get the exact geotagging of all the brick kilns in Bihar, and we will be able to pinpoint that how many and which areas are still having the old technology. So we are hopeful to complete this study within 6 months, and we are targeting that at the end of 1 year, no brick kilns in Bihar with old technology will run. And that way we'll be able to reduce as far as emission from brick kilns is concerned. We cannot stop brick kiln industry because, lots of construction going on. Another thing that we have changed on the bricks is promoting the fly ash bricks. We are promoting, because, in Bihar, so there's so many thermal power stations, and they have lots of fly ash, and they have problem in their disposal. So what we started, that we encouraged the bricks produced by fly ash, because if you use the fly ash brick, there's no firing, no coal firing. It is just you mix the fly ash and cement and cure it by water, and there's no emission from that. When I started, there were only 3 fly ash brick kilns. As of today, we have 250. And we are promoting the fly ash brick industry to come in larger numbers, and we are giving many facilities. Like one facility that we are giving them, we have tied up with NDPC and other the thermal power stations, and they are giving the fly ash for free, without any charge. And not only free, even the transport is being borne by the NTPC or any thermal power that is running. So that way it is lots of financial support to anybody who is trying to operate fly ash bricks. And not only that, at policy level, state government has given directive that all the new buildings, government buildings that will be coming up in Bihar, they have to use it is mandatory to use the fly ash bricks. They cannot use the red bricks, the old red bricks that is produced by the coal-fired chimneys. So that way, at least I'm hopeful that from brick sector, we will be able to reduce the emission a lot. And not only in decrease in emission, but also other aspects, the livelihood and the cost of the bricks, everything that will be improving. Then one more initiative from policy level in Bihar we have taken, that all government vehicles that is 15 years old, they are off the road now. Any government, we are not subject to private vehicles. We will be moving step by step. But at least in first step, right now in Bihar, any government vehicle that is more than 15-year-old, they are not running. So that is another thing that we have introduced already in place. And slowly we are going to put this ban on old vehicles on that of the private vehicles also. The third initiative that we have taken, that in all non-attainment cities, the main mode of transport was three-wheelers, three-wheeler auto-wheelers that you often see in Delhi also. But the difference in Delhi, most of the three-wheelers, they are running on CNG. But in Patna, cities like Patna, Muzaffarpur, and Gaya, they are being run by diesel and also by kerosene sometimes. And that gives lots of emission, huge emission, big emission source of emission. So what we did that in the city of Patna, the diesel-driven three-wheelers have been banned, and only electric vehicles are now being permitted. And whatever the diesel vehicles are there, they are being given the subsidy to get converted their three-wheelers, the diesel-driven three-wheelers, to that of the CNG fuel. GAIL already has installed 3 CNG stations, and coming time we expect more stations will be coming, and gradually we plan that all diesel-driven vehicles or kerosene-driven vehicles, they will be withdrawn from the roads. That will give another thing. Third thing, that is one more significant step that we have taken, that lots of road dust was there. Because Patna roads are not very wide, and the pavements are not usually pakka. That is soft alluvial soil. And due to traffic, heavy traffic, often one wheel, two wheels rather, of left-hand side is always on the pavement. And if the pavement is not braked, then that gives lots of emissions. Huge emissions are, huge emission is possible through them. So what we are doing, we have advised the road construction department to do the soling work to entire Patna town, and the money has been provided by government, and the work has started so that the road dust can be decreased. So many more steps are there that, as Dr. Gargava said, that we have prepared the action plan for the non-attainment cities, and we have divided into 3 parts: the short-term objective, mid-term objective, long-term objective, and that we are trying to implement. The biggest problem is there that in pollution control, one department is not involved. There are so many departments involved, like road transport department, building construction department, road construction department, urban department, forest department, and sometimes it becomes very difficult to coordinate between the different departments. To solve that problem, what we did, that we have formed a committee under Chief Secretary of Bihar. And if the committee is headed by Chief Secretary, and if he calls the meeting, then every department participates. That is the way bureaucracy works in India. That if a chairman of Pollution Control Board calls a meeting, then you will find that some junior officer comes, or a few senior officers also come. But if the meeting is called by Chief Secretary, then everybody turns up. So to resolve that bureaucratic hassle, I took the initiative. I met the Chief Justice. I told this is a problem, and you form a committee under your chairmanship, and then things will move faster. And that is actually happening. Due to COVID, the things were a bit slow, but now we are coming to normalcy, and government is also formed. Full state government is now in functioning. So we are hopeful that in coming time, we will have better coordination between departments, and every department will work in close cooperation with one another. So these are a few steps, and many more steps we are going to take to make cities like Patna and Bihar and Gaya and Muzaffarpur clean and healthy city. And before I conclude, I would like to point out one more thing, that as of now, CPCB thinks that in Bihar there are only 3 non-attendance cities. In Bihar, there are only 3 non-attendance cities because only 3 cities they have the continuous air quality monitoring stations. So very soon, when we will have 35 air quality monitoring stations, you will have more non-attendance cities.
More non-attendance, you will have more. Yes.
Like Bhagalpur and Darbhanga and all. And then I will ask you, I will request you to grant more fund to Bihar to combat air pollution. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Ghosh. Thank you very much for such wonderful insight to the step that you have been taking in Bihar. Now the next speaker has the most tough job. Mr. K.S. Jayachandran. He is Member Secretary from Delhi Pollution Control Committee, and maybe one of the most difficult task, at least in the country, if I cannot attribute it to other parts of the world, that he has to handle. The problem that he is facing, extremely complex on account of Delhi being capital city, all the time in focus. There are multiple complex sources. There are larger regional contributions. There are multiple agencies who are working to improve air quality. So how do we coordinate with them? In winter, being landlocked city, you have absolutely no winds, no dispersion, while you still have inflow of emissions from neighboring areas. So with a lot of complexities, Delhi in last few years has shown substantial improvement. 2016 and 2019, I'm not counting 2020 being a difficult year, not a representative year, but if you look at 16 and 19 data, there has been consistent improvement in PM10 and PM2.5 levels. The annual concentration of PM2.5 have come down almost by 20-25%, and similarly PM10 also by about 20%. So there has been continuous, consistent improvement despite all these complexities. So over to you, Mr. Jayachandran, as to what are your plans to take it forward and make sure that in the years to come, Delhi becomes a city, that is not termed as one of the most polluted, but a city that could set an example that despite all these complexities, despite such a higher levels, we were able to improve and provide breathable air quality to our people. So to you, Mr. Jayachandran.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. So I got a few slides to share. So Anju, can you help me?
But I'll request you if you could, cover in next say 7 to 8 minutes.
Yeah, sure. Are you able to see, sir?
Yes, we can see your slides.
Thank you so much. So, as per Sumit's requirement, I have actually outlined my talk under 3 or 4 topics. One, the progress made since NCAP, the progress made in air quality, the challenges which are being faced in Delhi, and the learnings for other cities. So Delhi has been very lucky in terms of existing in emission inventory findings. Terry had won the SUFFER study as well as IIT Kanpur. So all these studies were consistent in pointing out to road dust as the major source of particulate matter. The Terry emission inventory findings told that road dust is followed by construction, transport, and power plant, while the SUFFER study told that road dust is followed by industries, transport, and power plants. The IIT Kanpur in 2016 told that road dust is again the major contributor, followed by transport. So when we look at the progress made in cleaning air since NCAP, these are the subsectors which I could imagine in which we have been doing substantial amount of work in our mission to clean Delhi's air, be it monitoring of air quality, hotspots, vehicular pollution, biomass, municipal solid waste, construction and demolition, industrial pollution, smoke tower, and the use of information technology. The most important thing which I've been doing in collaboration with CPCB, of course, is the continuous real-time air quality monitoring, which I've been doing, especially on the 8 ambient air quality parameters on a real-time basis at 26 locations by our own stations and 14 stations of CPCB and IITM. So we are monitoring air quality index on a daily basis and correlating it with the daily mitigation actions as told by the chairman, member secretary, CPCB, undertaken by a huge plethora of stakeholders, agencies in Delhi through a Delhi State Environmental Health Bulletin, which we circulate to all the agencies on a daily basis. And the air quality is also monitored, and then we have this graded response action plan, which is also set into motion during the critical winter months. This is a happy picture which we always look at when we look at the air quality index during the last 3 years. So here we see in the air quality index that the good, satisfactory, and the moderate days, they actually increased from 159 in 2018 to 227 in 2020. At the same time, the poor, very poor, and the severe days, they reduced from 206 to around 130. And when we look at the particulate matter too, the last 6 years, I mean, we have seen a tremendous decrease in particulate matter. We saw a 15% reduction in PM 2.5 and 21% in PM 10. So what have we been doing? I mean, there are at least 20-25 agencies, multiple stakeholders in the landscape of Delhi who deal with air pollution and who are responsible for air pollution. So as DPCC, we have been trying hard in associating ourselves with all the agencies, and we ensure especially the issue of road dust. So, I mean, we have been forcing all the ULBs to use mechanical road sweeping and water sprinklers during the critical air pollution months. And we also track these machines with GPS for efficient monitoring of this. On a day-to-day basis, we involve 60 mechanical road sweeping machines, and 280 water sprinklers. And on a daily basis, we sweep 1,600 kilometers of road length, and 1,303 length of road is sprinkled with water every day. And this is another good thing which I've been doing by looking at the higher levels of PM10 and PM 2.5. We have been able to map spatially 13 hotspots in Delhi. And so what we do, we geographically map this, especially the 2-kilometer radius from the air quality monitoring stations where these PM levels are very high. And then we conduct on-ground inspections using all the local officers from different departments and agencies. And we create hotspot-wise short-term action plans based upon the inspections conducted, and the various categories of issues which have been resolved are removal of bulba, garbage, repairing of roads, removal of traffic congestion spots, mechanical sweeping, and night patrolling. And the most important is here the coordination with for interagency actions. And then we have been doing good substantially on augmentation of public transport. The last 2 years, we have seen almost a 22% increase in city bus fleet as we added around 1,200 cluster buses. And now we have an ongoing proposal to deploy another 1,800 cluster buses and 1,300 buses. And another good point which we need to appreciate as far as Delhi government is concerned is the electric vehicle policy, which was notified in August 2020, wherein we are offering financial incentives, including purchase and scrapping, waiver of road tax and registration for adoption of electric vehicles. And we are also establishing a huge good network of charging stations and swappable battery stations. And purchase incentives have so far given to 400 e-vehicles. We are also giving subsidies to e-rickshaws, 55,000 e-rickshaws, and we have disbursed rupees 160 crores since last 2 years. The last week, we also rolled out the Switch Delhi campaign, which will ensure that all the government departments, they switch to electric vehicles in the next 6 months. Traffic management, we have been using social media We have been returning non-destined goods vehicles, no entry for goods vehicles into Delhi, and introduction of early alarm system for commuters, as well as for identification of congested travel corridors. As far as prevention of stubble burning within the geographical boundaries of Delhi, we have been licensing with Development Department for distribution of agricultural implements among the suburban farmers of Delhi.
Mr. Jitendran,
yes.
in the chat box, I am getting messages that your camera is off. So if there are no connectivity issues, can you put on your camera as well?
Are you watching my this thing? Are you watching my presentation?
No, your presentation is seen.
Yeah.
Your camera.
No, sir, but when the presentation, I think when I project my presentation, my camera gets automatically off.
Oh, I don't know. Anyway, please continue.
Yeah.
Okay, please continue, and then try to conclude in next.
Yeah, I'm closing out.
Yeah.
So another innovation which I'm looking at is a PUSA biodecomposer solution, which is a microbial consortium which we are having from IRI PUSA, and a pilot has been done in 2,000 acres of paddy fields, and evaluation committee told that it has got around 80% efficacy. So regarding municipal solid waste also, we have got regular teams, around 200 teams on the ground. We have CCTVs and barbed wire fencing on all landfill sites and display boards. C&D activities, we are focusing on major construction sites, especially those sites which has got more than 20,000 square meter, and we ensure that anti-smoke guns are installed. Industrial pollution, online continuous emission monitoring system, we are surveying industrial areas, and out of 1,627 units, we have converted 1,607 units into cleaner fuel, that is PNG. Another innovation which we are trying to do is installation of smoke towers, and it's been installed at 2 locations in Delhi. And another innovation as far as IT is concerned is the Green Delhi app, which is an innovative platform for submission of pollution-related grievances from the public, which is actually a user-friendly mobile app for citizens. Round-the-clock Green War Room has been established in the Secretariat, and we deploy 70 green marshals for verification of resolved complaints. And last 3 months, we have received around 20,000 complaints, of which we have resolved. And the most important challenges, as Member Secretary told, that the geographical location really has been a huge disadvantage, though we can't do anything. We saw that Los Angeles, cities like Los Angeles, Manila, they're very lucky because they have some maritime influence. But Delhi has been not blessed with a maritime influence. And these meteorological conditions have been a huge challenge, especially when we look at the population density and the highest vehicular density in Delhi. Learning for other cities, I would say that it's a scientific and real-time monitoring we are doing in association with CPCB, and the spatial prioritization in hotspots and their hotspot-wise sub-action plans, the crowdsourcing of air pollution sources through Green Delhi app, and reaching out to these air pollution grievances as early as possible, and the revolution rolled out through promotion of e-vehicles through e-switch Delhi campaign. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, let me request Shri Srinivasulu, a Member Secretary from Karnataka State Pollution Control Board. Now, he comes from a state where Bangalore city has tremendous traffic-related problems. It is also an IT hub. I'm sure that he must be using a lot of IT tools to handle the situation in the city, not only in Bengaluru, but also other parts of the state. So let me welcome Mr. Srinivasulu with experiences of Bengaluru and other cities in Karnataka. Over to you, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Member Secretary, sir, for that kind introduction. In fact, he's dot on right where Bangalore being IT capital of the country, we are trying to use some of those technologies. Now, I'm making this presentation very brief. I'm taking leave from Mr. Iyad Kerbrick when he mentioned some on those lines. And based on this presentation, I think I'm making some thoughts on what activities are going on in Bangalore. Simply to put it, the Pollution Control Board essentially is looking at first identify the problem. Now, once you know the problem, bring the problem into public domain. The more the issue is in public domain, people start discussing on that. Discussion leads into debates, debates lead into programs, programs lead into policy, budget, and then implementation. And then based on those, what is the action plans and how we are doing. So essentially, briefly, I'm highlighting all these three things. Now, first, identify the problem. In fact, I'm happy that Bangalore now, Karnataka has 4 non-attainment cities. Out of that, now Bangalore source apportionment study has been done, thanks to the same agency who has helped us in doing this. And CPCB is taking the other 3 cities. Now, this is given up a simple thought where, yes, transport is the biggest, vehicular transport is biggest one, where it is contributing nearly 33%. Then accompanied road dust is another 23%. Industries is the third culprit, 17%. And some, because Bangalore has a lot of hotels, infrastructure kind of a thing, DG set is the fourth one with 7.5%. Now having known what is the problem, now next important thing is bring it into public domain. Now, this board has taken on a war footing in Bangalore where mass awareness has been done in a big scale. One is we have brought out with our dedicated KSPCB mobile app. Now nearly 20,000 people have already downloaded it in last 15 days, where in their palm top they can tell what is the air quality, what is the quality of the air they are breathing around. Okay. All my 31 air quality CAQM station data is made live to public so that they can have access in their mobile phone. Second is, all said and done, radio is a powerful tool, and then we are running through month-long campaigns in radio, and every month we are taking different theme. In fact, February month our theme is solid waste management, March it will be sewage, and every month we are taking one theme with specific speakers so that the issues of pollution should be in public domain. Third is, in fact, I have made this pollution parameter data, especially of air quality and water quality and air quality, in public. Like all my press in Karnataka will be publishing this data every day in their newspaper and radio. Now, I strongly believe gone are the days when during in TV weather report, we used to tell when is the rain, when is temperature kind of a thing. Maybe that was maybe 15, 20 years, it was more apt. Today, the weather report should in fact tell what is PM 2.5, what is PM 10, what is SOx, NOx, what is the quality of air that you are breathing. Okay, so that we have brought it. Now, in fact, responding to public is very important thing. In fact, board has come out with a integrated command control center, 24/7 accessibility to public, a dedicated number 255, 2559. Anybody can reach the pollution control board, and we are at their service either by phone, email, WhatsApp, and other things. So this is how regarding bringing the issues in public domain. Now, once we get the issues into public domain, then comes the policies and then action plans. I'm happy to say here, state government after that NCAP and Prime Minister's announcement in Red Fort, we are really taking this issue into very serious things. Now we have for Bangalore nearly 44-point action plan. For outside Bangalore, we have 27-point action plan. Now, along this, in fact, state government this year has come out with Vision 2022 agenda, wherein what is the priorities that Bangalore is setting for 2022, and Pollution Control Board as a major contributor in shaping out that action plan for Vision 22. In this, as Delhi, my friend from Delhi was mentioning, yes, the mass transport system, metro transport in Bangalore, nearly for last 5 years, nearly 200 kilometers added, and then that has reduced our vehicular transportation. It is coming up. Then second is infrastructures. I think because of smart city and other things, lot of road network, flyovers, which are reducing the transit time in Bangalore. That is also helping out. In fact, I'm happy to tell here, BMTC has come out with a specific plan of phasing out all those vehicles with electric vehicles. Right now, we have around 6,500 electric buses running in Bangalore. So over the years, it is happening. And then the state government from all those vehicles, Euro 3 to Euro 6, that is being shifted out. Now, all the autos, in fact, Bihar and then Delhi officers have mentioned, yes, autos is a big issue in Bangalore also. And now, state government and transport department has taken a conscious decision of phasing out all the autos into LPG network, and the subsidy is being offered to them. In fact, Bangalore and Karnataka has some other issues wherein fly ash is one issue. And Karnataka is lucky enough to have a lot of cement industries near where power plants are there. The fly ash that is generated from these industries, power plants, are given to cement industries, so that is being attended. In fact, Karnataka is well placed in assessing the quantity of issues. Right now, we have 31 CIQM stations that are collecting data and then giving to public. You will be surprised to hear this year we are adding 11 more CIQM stations into this pool of things. In my Vision 2022 thing, what I'm telling, all the industrial KADB, what we call industrial area development boards, board has mandatorily made them in all their industrial areas. Essentially, they have to put CIQM stations, and that data has to be linked to CPCB through CPCB to Pollution Control Board database. So this utilization of technology, bringing the issues to the public, this we are doing in a big scale. And in fact, I'm happy to announce here, just 3 days back, Confederation Indian Industries, we entered into a special MOU wherein a separate awareness trend to all the industries towards getting the industries into green industries. What are the different mechanisms they will do? We will be appreciating the industry which takes up any innovation, any technology to get into that greening industry in association with CII. So in fact, Karnataka is a big leader in renewable energy sources. In fact, we have 2,000 megawatt solar power project and the wind energy projects. So these renewable energy projects are also reducing consumption of coal-based energy in consumption in many of the industries and then transportation. So all said and done, yes, we are in a right track. In fact, sir, I'll finish, sir. So from the 2003 to 2020-21, if you see the data, luckily, Karnataka has been successful in reducing PM 2.5 below 100. Now we are at 87 microgram per meter cube. Our objective is, yes, to bring it still further. And KSPCB and Karnataka government is committed to in getting that, sir. I'm happy for giving me some opportunity to share some of the thoughts from all the respected participants. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. No, I'm thankful to Kelly, who has invited the Municipal Commissioner of Surat. In fact, when we started discussing air quality few decades back, it was primarily focused on transport or industries. But over the years, with more data, more source of question studies, it turned out that at the city level, the most important player is the municipal bodies. So in fact, at city level, it is a municipal commissioner, who will have to lead, be it greening of the city, be it maintaining the roads, managing city waste, whether it is construction, demolition waste, or solid waste. So municipal body's role is extremely important when we talk about local city level actions to mitigate air pollution. So I'm glad that Mr. B.N. Pani, Municipal Commissioner Surat, is with us. Surat, few decades back when we had this plague pandemic, had shown tremendous efforts in transforming a city, which was filthy to a very clean city. So, this is the kind of change a municipal commissioner or municipal body can make in a city. So, this, so over to you, Mani. You will receive a lot of funds under, from Finance Commission, specifically for air quality management for the first time. And air quality management cell also is now being created, I understand. in all these non-attainment city municipalities. So we'll be happy to listen to you as to what are your thoughts on and the effort that you are making at city level in Surat. So over to you.
Thank you very much, sir, for that nice introduction. In 1994, Surat was one of the cities which had plague because it was one of the dirtiest cities of the country. Now Surat is the second cleanest city of the country. Surat has seen a lot of disasters, whether it was 1968 flood or 2006 flood. In fact, disasters were there several times, but the kind of resilience which the city has shown over the years has been tremendous. And I must tell you that Surat is one of the eight largest cities of the country and one of the fastest developing cities in the entire world as per Oxford Economics. But all that is fine as far as development is concerned. It is one of the, it is called as the commercial capital of Gujarat. But we also are having the distinction of one of the two big cities which are non-attainment cities in the country as far as air pollution is concerned. And I must tell you that after that we have done a lot of work, a lot of actions have been initiated. We have done an emission inventory exercise, and we have seen that industry contributes 52% of the emission as far as PM10 is concerned, and as far as PM 2.5 it is 60%. So industry contributes major. As you know, Surat is a textile hub. In fact, it is one of the biggest textile hubs in the world. And these there are diamond industries in and around Surat. There are engineering goods and other industrial areas which are there. In fact, that is one of the major issues. The second very important thing is road dust, which we see in Delhi and Bangalore, and all these cities also have the same problem as far as road dust is concerned. And the third very important reason is construction dust. And I must tell you, in these three things, first is industry, second is road dust, and third is construction dust. First, I'll speak about industry. We have started an initiative called Emission Trading System, taking the help of JPAL, GPCB of Gujarat Pollution Control Board is in agreement, and they are spearheading this entire exercise. And in fact, Mr. Banerjee, who is a Nobel laureate who has JPAL, he is contributing for it. Surat is the first city in the entire world to start this emission trading exercise, in which there are many stakeholders which are participating, and we have fixed a cap. And any industry which is going beyond it has to be, the trading happens. And because of that, there is a major transformation as far as air pollution because of industrial contribution is concerned. That is number one. Second is road dust. In fact, to avoid road dust, we have started a scheme called Jan Bhagidari. In that, people's contribution is taken. So people contribute around 10%, remaining 90% of the grant is given by the government as well as Surat Municipal Corporation, and entire wall-to-wall exercise, so that there is no dust in the road. That is done in the city of Surat in a very, very big manner. That is second. And the third is construction dust. As far as Surat is a fast developing city in the world. In fact, every 10 years, the population of the city is doubling. Since 1961, the city doubles every decade. That is the kind of growth which is happening in the city of Surat. So we have taken the CREDAI, the Builders Association, the Developer Association on board, and we have created a best construction practices in the city of Surat that we have done. There are a lot of initiatives. I'll just go through. In 5 minutes, I'll share the presentation with you so that we'll go just, I'll not take much time, but I must tell you that because of this emission trading system that we have done in the industrial this thing, the emission is reduced by 21% over a period of 6 months. Over a period of 6 months, it is the pollution overall PM 2.5 and 10 is reduced, and now the industrial clusters of different cities like Vapi, Ankleshwar, Baroda, Ahmedabad, and other cities in the state of Gujarat are following this emission trading system. I'll just go through what are the projects. These are some of the air quality monitoring systems which are put in different places in the city. Next. These are the monitoring. Yes. Yes.
If you can, try and cover. Yeah, short and typical. We have some time for discussion.
Yes, absolutely. Next. So this Clean Air Action Plan, the major contributor is solid waste management. I will not speak much. There is a Swachh Sarvekshan going on in the entire country, where Surat came second in the entire country as far as cleanliness is concerned. Next. This biomining of our legacy waste, entire legacy waste is to be removed by biomining. The process has already started. Almost we have covered 50% of it. Next. This is earlier it was a landfill site. Now the closer work, now it is an ecological park site. It is 68 hectares of land near Diamond Goods. Next. This is the construction and demolition waste which contributes majorly. We have a 300 metric ton plant set up, and this is in fact processing, and we are reusing our construction and demolition waste through various ways like paver block, sand block, different construction material, etc. Next. So I told you about the procedure for creation of wall-to-wall schemes, and we have a lot of mechanical sweeping machines which are doing so that approximately 40 tons of dust is lifted in 6 months. That works. Next. So in the overall city areas, afforestation work is also going on. Next. These are electric buses that we have started in the city of Surat, and we are procuring, apart from 150 vehicles, we are procuring more 150 vehicles in the city. Next. These are some of the works which were done for the improvement of air quality, because air quality is nothing but it is an integration with other
Mr.
modes
Pani,
of, like what. Yes.
Mr. Pani, your slides are static.
It is not.
Yeah, it's not moving. Yeah.
It is not moving. Okay. Is it now?
Now it is, yes.
Now it is okay. Next. So Biodiversity Park is one we have developed. It is one of the biggest biodiversity park of the country. In fact, all the creeks which are there in the city of Surat are developed into green zones. It is the biggest lung in the city, in the center of the city. Next. The city-wide beautification and afforestation activities has been, in fact, we are having the longest BRTS corridor in the country, and entire BRTS corridor of Surat is completely green with, to absorb the air quality. Next. So as has already been discussed about the 15th Finance Commission, we have, this is for the first time, as Prashant sir has already spoken. This is for the first time that air quality has got a big push from Government of India. and now we are getting, as per the performance of the cities, will get the funds from Government of India, and air quality is very, very important. And for air quality, we have taken a lot of projects, whether it is monitoring station, C&D waste collection, or creek beach, or all the components are taken into account. Next. So that's all. I'll not go much into other details. I think I'll invite questions if possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. In fact, this central grant that is flowing to 42 million plus cities, while the first installment goes straight without any performance, but the subsequent grants are linked to performance. So that is something which will motivate, which will push cities to perform better, to be able to get the next installment of the central grants. Now I'm looking at the chat box. There are a few questions. First question maybe I should take. It's about reduction in budget of Ministry of Environment, Forest, Climate Change. Question is from Shivani Sharma. She's asking whether this can slow down or halt the environmental measures. Not
So
at all.
just to interrupt you, Shivani is only collating all the informations which are coming from the audiences who can see this, and she will. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So whosoever has put this question, now cutting down budget of ministry does not mean that there will be slowing of actions, because the budget of the sectors which eventually will contribute to air quality improvement, be it e-mobility, be it municipal corporations, who are actually supposed to act on ground, it's not related to their budget. So I think that apprehension, you should not have that apprehension. The next two questions, maybe I'll request Dr. Ghosh to quickly respond to. One question is, then when 15-year-old vehicles are meeting the norms, why they are not being allowed to ply? That's number one. And number two, dust is also being generated from construction activities. So how that is being addressed in Patna? So if you can, in a couple of minutes, can respond to these two questions.
Yeah, about 15-year-old buses, what we have seen, we did a random survey for their emission coming out of them. And almost 95% of the vehicles that is beyond 15 years old, they do not perform as per the standards. And it is also, every vehicle has a life. After that, the whatever maintenance you do, the emission, it is very difficult to stop beyond a limit. So that is why the general consensus was there that if you take off all the buses that is 15 years old, then that will be a good decision, because every 6 months checking all the vehicles that is more than 15-year-old tedious task. So that is why this step was taken. That is number one. Regarding construction activities, in Patna also lots of controversy, lots of construction were going on, and dust emission is there. Two things we have done mandatory for this. One is that every construction site, they have to keep covered all the construction materials, like the sand and stones and other things. And use of sprinklers has been made mandatory. That if any construction is going on, they have to keep the sprinklers, and from time to time, they have to sprinkle the area to reduce the dust. It is not being followed 100% as of now, but district administration is taking strict action, and slowly, anything needs awareness. And in big cities, it is very difficult in one step to bring everybody online. So these things have been already formulated, and we are taking action on that.
All right, thank you. Now, of course, the newer vehicles, when we are talking about BS6 vehicles, so newer vehicles with better technology, with less emissions, will have to come on roads, and then old vehicles will have to go off. That's extremely important. Next question is about daily source proportional studies. There are many studies available, but none of these talk about contribution of stall burning. if I can, answer this, it depends on, when actual monitoring was conducted and whether stubble was considered in the CMB modeling as a source. But nonetheless, we have contribution coming from stubble only for 50 to 60 days, and on day-to-day basis we have been able to track the number of active fire events and model as to what is the contribution. So we have that information available with us, not necessarily in those 3 studies, but otherwise we have that information. The next question is about air quality monitoring at village level. Is there any plan for that? I think I should take this question as well. And also opinion of low cost sensor, maybe that I can hand over to either any of my colleagues from Pollution Control Board. Now, of course, rural monitoring, now at few places it has already been initiated, especially in Punjab, and NCAP envisages putting up a rural network. So it is something that is a work in progress. Meanwhile, we are taking use of satellite-based information along with IIT Delhi. CPCB has worked on indigenous correlation between AOD and ground-based PM 2.5. So we are able to get some even in the rural areas to what are the air qualities. But this network is something which is work in progress. So sensor network, we will have different opinions, but maybe I'll request Karnataka Member Secretary if he can quickly respond to this as to what is your opinion about this.
Sir, this low-cost sensors has to be taken with a pinch of salt, because the value that it generates will become a source for discussion. We have come across with some cases here, like some smart city projects here and there. Some cities have procured this low-cost sensors, and it gives some data. The minute that is there, public will not be asking those smart city people. They will be asking Pollution Control Board that there is that data, what is the issue, kind of a thing. So it has to be taken with caution. At no point of time the quality cannot be compromised, because this data becomes a point of discussion and for decision making.
Okay, thank you very much. If I can add very quickly on this low cost sensor. Now every monitoring technique will have its own merits and demerits, and will have its own domain applications. So even if these are not able to provide very accurate data for compliance verification or for taking large policy decisions, but at least in some applications I see, even if at this stage wherein you do not have a good calibrated or accurate systems available, for example, in construction sites, if you install this low cost sensor, you are not required to have very high quality data, but will give you some indication whether the measures that are to be followed for construction activities are being done or not. So I think there are some applications where we can use such monitoring techniques in the present scenario. But in the years to come, maybe if we have better one, why not? We should look for low cost monitoring network. Then this question is for Delhi. It says air quality monitoring in sorry. Another question is about Maharashtra stands in progressing towards clean air. Maharashtra has 17 non-attainment cities. I'm afraid there is nobody from Maharashtra present here. And all these 17 cities, my understanding is that action plans are already approved for implementation. All the 17 cities are in the advanced stage of, so they are also progressing well along with other towns and cities in the country. Then now this question is to Mr. Srinivasulu. In areas like Bellary, Taranagulu, Horsapete, etc., dust pollution has created a havoc for people residing there. And it says that iron mining and industrial cluster have polluted these areas. So what is KSPCB or government doing or planning to mitigate pollution in these areas?
Yes, sir. You're absolutely right, sir. In fact, just 2 days back, we had a big dharna in Ballari district in Toranagallu regarding some of those sponge iron factories. We had called everybody. We have conducted a personal hearing, and then they are we are taking affidavit and undertaking from them a time-bound action plan. What is to be done to mitigate these issues and address the concerns of people. And based on those affidavits and based on those undertakings, we have charted out the specific things and then we'll monitor it, sir. The things are under control, sir. No issue.
Okay. Now, next question is to Mr. Pani. This is about, it says that how come Surat source apportionment does not talk about transport sector? I'm not sure whether you have no, kindly unmute.
The paucity of time, I couldn't dwell upon other areas. For example, biomass, transport, and other areas. In fact, transport contributes 4% for PM10 and 9% for PM2.5 in Surat. That is why we are changing our transportation from the existing fossil fuel technology to electric buses, and in fact 300 buses out of 800 buses will be made electric very soon, and we are also trying to expand the transportation sector to a new area which will not contribute much for air pollution.
Okay, thank you very much. I think I have once again tried to look at the chat box. I think there are no questions left now. More or less all have been answered, and Frances Beinecke has put a comment which is extremely relevant. It says that civil society has a role to both campaign for action and for providing reports and transparency to the public. If I can add here, public also has a larger role to play. By way of changing their habits. In Delhi especially, we have seen the traffic is a problem. One of the main reasons is not lane driving. Nobody follows. It's extremely difficult in NCR part to ensure that people follow lane behavior. So public also has to contribute to the entire effort. So with this, I think we have come to end of the discussion. I'm extremely grateful to all the panelists, who were able to provide insight as to what is being done by different departments or in the respective cities. I'm sure Terry must be, providing some sort of, a brief note or compendium, listing as to what different cities have done. And also at the international level, I missed, some of the presentations. But I'm sure you will be able to, put a brief, report and share with all of us, for learning and then implementing in our respective, cities and places. With this, Sumit, if anything else that you expect me to do, otherwise allow me to thank all the panelists and also the other speakers, including the speakers from the first session, and of course, Terry and then organizers for giving this opportunity. We always look forward to such forum for discussion, for sharing experiences, sharing knowledge. It helps us in either fast tracking our efforts rather than reinventing something new. It's better to learn from elsewhere and then put it in use and then move ahead with a much faster pace. So with these words, I again thank you all and thanks for this opportunity. Sumit, now it's over to you.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Garga. It was an excellent session. We could hear so many things from different parts of the country, and the differences in the source contributions, the way they are trying to handle those sources is enormous. One thing I think we didn't speak about is the capacities we have in the boards. I mean, all said and done, we will agree that our capacities are limited. Now the funds are starting to flow, And I'm sure in next few years, we'll see that the capacities of the boards are enriched and we can see larger, enforcement of the laws and the standards which we have in place.
Sumit, if I can add here
Sure.
on this, of course, there are many constraints. In the limited time, you do not, touch all the issues involved. But in the Finance Commission grant, 20% is being allocated for capacity building with the state pollution control boards.
Right.
So there are
Absolutely.
funds specifically. So in years to come, we will have better capacities also. I'm sorry, please.
Absolutely, sir. So I must just try to conclude that we have acquired some sort of momentum. We have started to move, and in fact, we will soon be running to improve our air quality all across the nation. The need is to sustain the actions, to strengthen the actions, and in my opinion, focus on the longer term objectives for air quality improvement. There are shorter, smaller things which we may do in small pockets, but the longer term, bigger measures, if we take, that can provide, longer term benefits to the whole region of India. I will just draw, I mean, being a diehard fan of cricket, I will just draw a simile to the game. When we are chasing a mammoth total, two things we do. One is to break the targets into smaller targets and then try to chase them in one by one. The second important thing we do is to do partnerships. We need to have partnership with so many different types of people, so many, and same is happening in the air pollution field. It is not going to work if you just speak to industry. It is not going to work if you just speak to farmers. So you will probably need to have partnerships with so many people, and be careful not to get out in between. So
And Sumit, if I can add, you also need one Gavaskar, one Tendulkar, one Virat Kohli.
I'm sure, sir, we have those. I'm very sure about those. And it is just that the partnerships need to get going. And I think everything will fall in place. So we hope for a very bright future sooner than later. And with this note, I thank all the participants, all the speakers, esteemed speakers from both the panels for this very enriched discussion. I finally hand it over to my colleague, Dr. Anju Goyal, to provide the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Sumit. Well, it's my great pleasure and privilege to be a part of this initiative and also to extend the vote of thanks. First of all, I would like to propose hearty vote of thanks to Bloomberg Philanthropies for supporting this initiative. Special mention to Ms. Priya Shankar and Ms. Pooja Tiwari for their constant support in this direction. I want to extend thanks to the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, the Central Pollution Control Board, the Gujarat State Pollution Control Board, the Bihar State Pollution Control Board, and local stakeholders of Surat and Patna for supporting the project activities. I would also like to thank all the national and international speakers for gracing their crucial work and sharing with us their opinions and findings of their research, which made the event very informative. Thank you very much. Thanks are due to Dr. Ajay Mathur, Director General TERI, for providing constant guidance, support and encouragement. I would also like to thank WSDS team for providing logistic support for the event. Thanks are due to the CES team for their constant effort in organizing this event. I sincerely thank all the delegates of this webinar for showing their interest to participate in this event and provided their valuable contribution in one way or the other in making the event a success. We are looking forward for your presence in upcoming event tomorrow as well in the summit. Thank you very much.
With this, I would also like to thank all our partners, WRI, C-STEP, ADRI, Urban Emissions, for continuously working with us, our State Pollution Control Board in Karnataka, and all those people for their collaboration, their contribution. Stay tuned with us for tomorrow's event. We have a plenary event at 5:30 p.m. in the evening, where we can hear the chairman of the newly formed Commission of Air Quality Management, Mr. Kutty, speaking. Priya will be there from Bloomberg. And then we have Mitch Bernard from NRDC and Mr. Thornton from Client Earth, moderated by Dr. Ajay Mathur. Will be a very interesting session. Look forward to see you all. Thank you for your patience. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Good night.